Okay, so welcome back to the final part of our week 5 marathon YouTube lectures. I've had to do 4 hours of video today, so my voice is pretty much gone. So what we were talking about in the last one is, in the last block, was how do we foster open service innovation. So we talk about what's different about it. So the customer experience, the product is intangible. So, if we want to foster open service innovation, we need to work really closely with the customer to develop new solutions. So the customer becomes part of the design team. We really need to focus on utility rather than the product. So, if you take something like Xerox no longer, provide printers. They provide printing solutions. So they'll actually provide the printer, They'll service it, they'll make sure it's ink in it, they'll make sure there's paper in it, they'll do everything that's needed for you. And as such, you no longer have to worry about that, and you're prepared to pay that little bit extra for it. But then that service has to be exactly what you need. Another way of doing it is to actually embed your company into your customer's organization. So if you're a factory and you're manufacturing products that need to be shipped to a customer, well, why do you have your own shipping department when UPS or professionals will come in and oversee the whole supply chain for you, where they'll actually, so they're the experts in, packing, in getting stuff to the airport in time and all these things, and they have all the infrastructure in place, so they can be far more effective on it. So, it's kind of really important that there are some really fundamental assumptions around open innovation. And the first one is that that people need to be willing to share knowledge. So if you've got somebody who's not prepared to share, who's kind of a political animal and who thinks information is power and all those cliches, it won't work. Like, if people aren't willing to cooperate with each other, it won't work. Another assumption is that knowledge is actually codifiable. So an awful lot of people talk about instinct and, these kind of things. So if you can't actually codify the knowledge, if you can't express it in a way that's communicable to somebody else, then it won't work. And it's also that knowledge can actually be shared via IT systems. So if we want to work with people in India or China or Africa or multiple different places, we're going to have to rely on sharing knowledge via IT. Everything can't be done over a cup of coffee. So real challenges around it is, one of the things is that the organization's boundaries need to become porous. So it means information can flow in and out. But, that's a real concern for some organizations, that there could be some knowledge leakage. The other thing around people's motivations. So are people actually willing to share knowledge? What happens if there's a conflict? What happens if people don't like each other? What happens if they think that knowledge is key to their status? So they're the expert on a particular thing and nobody else knows how to do it. Why would they share information if they think it's going to undermine their status? If they don't trust other people, it's a big issue. So, some of our colleagues in the School of Business are interested in how trust can break down in joint ventures and whether joint ventures will be continued if people breach that trust. Our organisation is actually committed to it. So lots of organisations, sign up for things and they don't demonstrate a high level of commitment. The culture in the organisation, this culture eats strategy for breakfast cliche that I'll keep coming out with. But if the culture is against sharing, if the culture rewards people who are secretive, then open innovation is unlikely to work. Just excuse me while I have to close the door. I suppose I really could have hit pause there while I was doing that, but it's just easier to shoot through. Okay, so the reward recognition in the organisation, what behaviours actually get rewarded? If we don't reward people who communicate and share with each other, then we're not going to foster open innovation. Another thing is this idea of not invented here syndrome. So the idea is that there's a resistance to an outside idea or technology because it's not invented in the organisation. So then it can't be that valuable if we didn't invent it. I'd much rather my invention be used. And a lot of times the rewards will actually facilitate that. So, you can have an engineer in an organisation who has a patent that they get paid royalties from. And if that, that piece of technology isn't as good as something else, they're still going to be loath to remove it if a source of income goes for them. So, Procter & Gamble have responded to that with a PFE award, proudly found elsewhere. This is actually an award for people who can go out and find technology somewhere else and make use of it. So the real issue is, do you hoard or do you share your information? So Coca-Cola have always hoarded this secret ingredient, because they think it's the key to their success. And people have all sorts of ideas as to what's in it, and there's a whole, story around how it's kept secret and whatever. Because they think that unique, distinct taste is what gives them success. But, the Toyota production system and other things are shared out among other organizations. So it's a real challenge for companies to decide how much knowledge should the business give away? What's the right amount to give away? Should they give everything away, or is there core information they need to keep secret? And that, the argument is, what is the most valuable knowledge in the firm? A lot of this information is being eroded anyhow, because, as we sequence genomes and develop models for quantum chemistry and whatever, experimental information that organizations has found is being reproduced by other organizations and made publicly available. So that's the final part on open innovation. So the whole idea to think about that is whether you think it makes sense for an organization to share information, or whether they should retain control over the ideas they have. An important thing to remember is that there's more than one way of doing something in software. So even if you write a piece of software to do a specific thing and you patent it, there's no guarantee that somebody else won't look at what it does and find a different way of doing the same thing that's not covered by your patent. So patents tend to be relatively ineffective in software and information systems. So that means that, while the concepts of open innovation apply to all forms of R&D, they're particularly valuable in information systems. There's a long tradition of open source, crowdsourcing, and organizations taking in information that's been developed by the crowd or by open source communities and using it. So it's a particularly, while open innovation is relevant across all innovation paradigms, it is particularly important and significant within the field of information systems. Okay, thanks for listening to the videos. So there's 5 in total. When you're working on the MCQ, I would suggest that, the first 4 weeks of class lectures will have the majority of ones. There will be a couple of questions come from the first hour or so of content here. If you have any questions about any of the material we've covered, just drop me a quick email, use Moodle, or ask a question in class next week, ideally. I hope everybody stays safe and doesn't get too cold, and hopefully the weather won't be as severe as everybody's afraid. Thanks a lot. Bye.